Hello, my name is Erica Johnson. I work at the Institute of Education Sciences, or IES, which is the independent research arm of the U.S. Department of Education. Within IES, I work in the National Center for Education Evaluation, or NCEE, which is one of IES's 4 national centers. One of NCEE's core functions is to conduct unbiased, large-scale evaluations of education programs supported by federal funds. I oversee the national evaluation to inform the 21st Century Community Learning Centers program, and this presentation will provide an update on the study. As you may remember, the evaluation has 2 components, a national snapshot and an impact study. The first component is the national snapshot, which will survey a select set of after-school centers from around the country in order to describe centers' goals and strategies for achieving them. We know that there is a broad range of activities and programming happening in centers, and the National Snapshot will provide up-to-date information on how centers are supporting the needs of their participants. The second component is the impact study, which will examine the effectiveness of a promising strategy for program improvement. This study began a year ago, and some of you may remember that I provided a high-level study update back in February. We had been engaging in some early study activities, which were ongoing at that point. In particular, last fall we engaged with a number of stakeholders, including state coordinators, foundation leaders, and researchers, to learn about what information would be useful to provide through the National Snapshot, and to learn about what is commonly done in the field or seen as promising yet lacking evidence in order to inform how our impact study would be useful to the field. These conversations were very helpful, and we appreciate the participation of everyone who provided their input. We heard through many of these conversations that the field is increasingly focused on program quality and how to improve it. We looked into a number of program quality improvement strategies to assess whether any were good candidates for being the focus of our impact study. Specifically, we considered whether strategies were widely applicable. We know that centers offer a wide variety of activities. Since we intend for the results of the study to be useful to a wide audience, we looked for a strategy that would be widely applicable to different types of centers, rather than a strategy focused on a narrow content area. We also considered whether strategies were policy relevant. In particular, we looked for a strategy that has a clear logic model for how it would lead to changes in staff practices, along with trainings, and ultimately lead to improvements in policy-relevant student outcomes. Finally, we want to have some assurances that it's reasonable to think that the strategy we're evaluating could lead to improvements in policy-relevant outcomes. So we looked for a strategy with some prior evidence of effectiveness. We determined that evaluating a continuous quality improvement system would fulfill those criteria, and that it would be useful to the field since there is widespread use of activities consistent with that strategy and considerable interest in such a strategy. Throughout this process, we also consulted with the program office to assess the needs of the department. As you all might be aware, the Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA, contains new requirements on the use of evidence. This study is an exciting opportunity to contribute to evidence building while also supporting program improvement. We have also been, of course, taking into consideration the changing landscape due to COVID-19 and making some adjustments to the study timeline. We have been planning how to move forward with the study, but we acknowledge that the timelines may be in flux and we may need to adjust them moving forward. They are not set in stone. I also want to acknowledge that through the stakeholder engagement efforts, that we heard some broader comments and concerns about the evaluation. For example, anxiety about how the evaluation findings were used in the past and the contractor selected. I'll do my best to address those concerns in subsequent slides and in ongoing engagement and updates beyond this presentation. As a result of those study activities, we made some updates to the study plans. First, I'll talk about our National Snapshot study plans, and then on the next slide, I'll talk about the impact study plans. The main goal of the National Snapshot is to provide useful and up-to-date descriptive information on what 21st century after-school centers are doing, given their varied goals and activities. We heard during the stakeholder engagement that centers are trying to be thoughtful on a number of dimensions, including how they meet participants' needs and how they deal with a number of challenges. Specifically, we plan to provide information on centers' programming and how they ensure that it meets the needs of participants, and in terms of how they are supporting staff. We will also collect information on how centers address challenges that we know are prevalent in after-school centers, such as staff turnover and regularity of student participation. The APR already collects some of this information at a high level, and our goal is to collect more in-depth information that's complementary to that high-level information in the APR. The last national descriptive study of the program is now 10 years old, and we know that the program has been evolving in the meantime, so that existing information is dated. Given the limited resources for the National Snapshot, we aren't able to provide information on the entire program, given the wide breadth in emphases and activities. Since the majority of 21st century funds support after-school centers, we will focus the National Snapshot on after-school centers. We also want to limit the burden of data collection, so we're thinking about how to focus the content to provide an in-depth look at important aspects of the after-school center. We will accomplish these goals by surveying a national set of after-school centers, including all types of grantees across all grades served. You may remember that we originally planned to survey the selected after-school centers in spring 2021. In consultation with Miriam and the program office, we made the decision to move that data collection until spring 2022, since it seems increasingly likely that this coming school year will not be typical. We don't want to be a burden on centers this coming school year in the midst of everything else they will be dealing with. Hopefully by spring 2022, things will look more typical, and thus we will collect more useful and relevant information. The second component of the evaluation is the impact study. The impact study is not an up or down vote of the program as a whole. Rather, this is an evaluation of a strategy that states and grantees might choose to implement. We have heard the concerns about the prior evaluation, and we see this as a great opportunity to change the narrative by creating new evidence on a promising strategy that may be used within after-school centers. As a result of the activities I discussed a couple slides back, the study will evaluate a continuous quality improvement, or CQI, strategy. We know from the literature that program quality is essential, and we heard from stakeholders that folks are interested in promoting program quality and how to do it well. The CQI strategy includes 3 phases in a repeating cycle: assessment of program quality, the creation of an improvement plan to address gaps in quality, and targeted supports to staff in response to the needs identified in the improvement plan. The idea is the CQI strategy would improve the practices staff use to support student success, including practices to promote students' social and emotional growth. Those improved practices would then lead to improved student social and emotional skills and behavior in the after-school setting and during the school day, and potentially other school-related student outcomes. We have brought on the Forum for Youth Investment's Weichert Center for Youth Program Quality to implement the CQI strategy by providing the assessment tools and training workshops for a number of reasons. First, their model of continuous quality improvement has some evidence of effectiveness, which is an encouraging sign that it's reasonable to expect that we will see positive impacts in this evaluation. Second, they already have well-developed assessment tools and trainings, so if states and grantees are interested in implementing the CQI system after the study, they would be able to do so. Third, their model and other CQI approaches are increasingly being used by after-school programs, so generating evidence on the effectiveness of such approaches would be helpful for the field. We heard from some of you back in February that it wouldn't necessarily be useful to evaluate the Weichert Center's model in particular because some states and centers use other program quality improvement systems due to cost or other factors. We have designed the study so that we will provide a wealth of information on the elements of the CQI strategy and what it takes to implement it so that the findings can be useful to all states and centers. In particular, we will collect data on all of the steps of the CQI strategy. Centers might find the information on select steps to be useful if they're implementing or planning to implement certain aspects of the CQI strategy. The impact study will include 100 after-school centers who are interested in participating and meet study criteria. We're planning to implement the CQI strategy during the 2021 to 22 and 2022 to 23 school years. Again, we will reassess that timeline moving forward to make sure that it's reasonable and feasible in light of COVID. We originally planned to only implement the strategy for 1 year in the impact study, but we heard during our stakeholder engagement that that's not enough time to reasonably expect to see improvements in program quality that then filter down to students, so we extended the impact study to 2 years. We will collect data during both of the 2 study years and can can inform how implementation changes over time, whether and how the strategy works, and for which types of centers and students. We know there are concerns about this evaluation, and some of you may have concerns about the contractor selected to carry out the study. IES is committed to being transparent with the 21st century community about the study and conducting a high-quality evaluation that is useful to the field. This is true of all of our studies, and especially true of this one, since we know there are particular sensitivities. To do so, we have mechanisms in place to solicit feedback and ensure that the study will meet our quality standards. In particular, we have engaged in stakeholder engagement and provided updates at the summer symposium and at the winter state coordinator meeting. We will continue to provide periodic updates moving forward to enable ongoing communication with the field. We also obtain advice from national experts at critical junctures, such as before finalizing study plans and when it comes time to obtain input on our preliminary study findings. On all IES studies, there is substantive involvement of IES staff on every step along the way. Our contractors conduct these types of studies on behalf of IES and under our direction. That will be true for Mathematica on this study, as it is true for our contractors on all IES studies. We also have several built-in mechanisms that transparently share information on the study plans. In particular, the study's plans, including the data collection and analyses, will be registered in the Registry of Efficacy and Effectiveness Studies, which can be found online. In addition, the evaluation surveys will be publicly available as part of the Office of Management and Budget Clearance process. Finally, all IES study reports are peer-reviewed by an independent office within IES, and they use external reviewers to ensure the accuracy and rigor of our reports before they are published. We have a number of upcoming study activities over the next few months in order to finalize and share our study plans and move forward with recruitment for the impact study component. We are currently making adjustments and finalizing the study design based on the very helpful input we received recently from external experts. Tomorrow, I will be giving an update very similar to this one to the broader stakeholder community. Over the next few months, we will also schedule a follow-up webinar for state coordinators with our contractor, Mathematica, to provide more in-depth information about the study. We will have time then for questions and comments, and we can introduce our study partner, the Forum's Weichert Center. I will be in touch through the listserv to make you all aware of that follow-up webinar. We then plan to proceed with recruitment for the impact study this fall. We will start the recruitment process at the state level to identify grantees who are promising candidates for participating in the impact study. We can provide more information at the follow-up webinar as to what criteria for you to think about when determining which grantees might be most promising. I will note that states that already work with the Forum's Weichert Center to implement a continuous quality improvement system in all of their 21st century programs statewide will not be eligible to participate in the impact study. With that, I want to say thank you for your input so far. We appreciate all of the information we have already received from state coordinators through the stakeholder engagement last fall, the input we received at the meeting back in February, and from those of you that participated in the meeting of external experts. As I mentioned, I will be reaching out about a live webinar to share more information on the study and answer questions. If you have any questions about the study in the meantime, you can reach me at erica.johnson@ed.gov. If you have specific questions about recruitment or participation in the impact study, you can reach out to the Mathematica study team directly, either to Suzanne James Bertamy or Hanley Chang. Thank you.